Mitch Light The Athletic.com joins us on 365 Sports. There he is. I'm David Smoke with Paul Catalina and Craig Smoke, and we appreciate your time every afternoon between 3 and 6 with all the other things we do, including Triple Option 1 until 2. Mitch, thank you very much for your time. We're not going to break down like who has the best OPA and all that other stuff, but wanted to get, here we are. You're still a ways from when you have the conference tournament and eventually the regionals, super regionals, whatever. What, in your opinion, might be the biggest story or two in college baseball that's caught your attention up until now?
Yeah, so, well, good to be here, guys. I always love talking college baseball. And, we're about halfway, I guess 60% of the way through most conference schedules. So there's enough there to know, who's good, who's not good, who needs to make a late run, all that stuff. And I don't want to be boring with this answer, but I just think it's the SEC's dominance. You add the nation's best conference, you expand it by 2, and one of those teams is the clear-cut number 1 team in the country in Texas. And then you add the drama there that the coach of Texas, Jim Schlossnagle, happened to coach at the rival last year, Texas A&M, who got off to a horrendous start in conference play and now can't lose. So there's so much drama there. And then Oklahoma is having a solid season, definitely an NCAA tournament team. So, there's good storylines in the ACC and the Big 12, and then some intrigue with, the Big 10 expanding out west with UCLA and Oregon. They just had a big series. But, again, hate to be boring, but it's got to be the SEC.
Now, the ACC is no slouch either. I mean, they've got 2 of the top 5 in Clemson and FSU. Now, FSU's history in the College World Series is as painful as human beings can tolerate. Believe me, I know. But Clemson, is also legit. Who would you say of the ACC teams is the most likely to have that deep run, to be in that final series? Is it Clemson, because they are really, really good top to bottom?
Yeah, they are. And one thing I'll say about the ACC, that it is very, very good at the top. And that's never been an issue when you're comparing leagues. The problem, in my opinion, is the ACC is just bottom heavy too. There's just too many teams. The bottom of the ACC, there's too many easier wins to be had than the SEC. One team that, if we talked a couple of weeks ago, guys, I would not have mentioned as maybe the best team in the ACC is North Carolina, but they are playing really, really well. They had another big series when they swept Wake Forest a couple of weeks ago. Clemson is probably the best team. Their starting pitching hasn't been great for the most part after their Friday night starter. Their bullpen has been very good, but they have this, it's catchy to call them cardiac Clemson, but it's true. They, under Eric Bakich the last couple of years, they find ways to win games. There's a belief system there. It's a very difficult place to play. Florida State's interesting. Obviously a great team this year. Did not play Virginia last weekend because of the tragedy that happened there. I meant to dig into this. I have not seen if they're making those games up. I can't imagine they will. It's very difficult to make up a weekend series in college baseball. But Florida State's starting pitching is outstanding.
Mitch, what have you seen as far as, you kind of touched on it there with the SEC, but the Jim Schlossnagle effect, at least early on? Texas is the top team in the country, so they're rolling. But what is it about what he's come in and done there to a program that already had massive amounts of success? But what has been your impressions of just his imprint so far in Texas? And what has the other effect been like, in your opinion, taking him out of the equation in College Station?
Yeah, it's weird. I'm love baseball, played baseball growing up, but I think we'd all admit, even those that love the sport, like, it's not like basketball where you can watch a system for the most part, or football, you run the, spread offense, 3-4 defense. Like baseball, coaching matters, of course, but it seems to matter less unless you're talking about Jim Schlossnagle, because this is not the most talented Texas roster. Sure, they've got really good talent, but they lost Max Blue, their All-American outfielder. They've just done a masterful job pitching, and he brings over his pitching coach with him, and they have I wrote about this today. Their ERA in league play is like a run and a half better than any other team. That's just amazing that you lead the conference in league games by that much. So you look back at from TCU, he has won everywhere he's been, and the effect at Texas A&M. Things are a lot better now. Like, if we would have been talking 3-4 weeks ago, you'd say, well, Michael Early was not ready for this job. How do you turn over such a program with so much talent and expectations to a guy who's never been a head coach? but they've clearly found something there. They stayed the course, which is a credit to that coaching staff. The thing that about Texas A&M that you never really wanted to give up on them, even when they were 1-8 or one, I think they fell to 1-9 when that loss to Tennessee, is they were pitching well. Now, they haven't pitched as well during this winning streak, which is kind of funny, but they're hitting very, very well. So they look like a clear NCAA tournament team. And if Michael Early goes on to have a great career and they win SEC championships or whatever, we're going to forget about this start, but it was definitely one of the storylines halfway through the season, that how much of a disappointment they'd been after being the consensus preseason number one.
They lost a player or two early, Mitch, and then they had a couple who have also come back. How much did that give them some juice?
Overwhelmed by your inbox? Clean Email is here to help. Organize, clean, and manage your emails with powerful automation tools. Say goodbye to spam and clutter and enjoy a stress-free inbox. Try Clean Email today at cleanemail.com. That's CLEAN email.com.
Well, Gavin Gravovic was the guy that was lost, and he was a third baseman. He was freshman of the year nationally last year, so that was huge. He's not back. Caden Sorrell's been an outfielder that came back, was a little slow his first weekend, but then he really had a big weekend in their win against that doubleheader win against Tennessee, which really got them going. I think he hit 3 home runs in that doubleheader. So part of it was the juice, as you mentioned, of him coming back, and part of it was just guys playing better. I mean, baseball is a very cyclical, whatever you want to, you guys get hot, guys get cold. And when you got 9 guys in your lineup and 3 or 4 get hot at the right time, you can do some damage. And they went up to Fayetteville this weekend against a very, very good Arkansas pitching staff and won 2 games. That's the thing that really told me they were back. The Tennessee taking a doubleheader, that's really impressive. They come back, they beat South Carolina, who's not very good, but they had to rally to win 2 of those games. So you're like, okay, they beat a bad team. But going up to Fayetteville really showed you that this team, I don't know if they're back to preseason number 1 status, but they're back to being a top 25 caliber team, no doubt about it.
How much do you think that Kentucky, we'll just call it the Kentucky kerfuffle, on that maybe woke them up a little bit, because they had been kind of emotionless for a little while, and then anger is an interesting motivator, Mitch.
Yeah, I had not thought about that. That's a good point, though. And, referring to the Sunday game in College Station, where I guess Kentucky was chartering home. A lot of teams, Kentucky was flying commercial. A lot of teams charter. So they had to, there was a curfew, and Kentucky clearly was taking its time, stalling to try and get out of there with a win. And maybe those guys saw some fire from Michael Early that they hadn't seen before. Who knows? We see it in basketball when coaches get teed up. But yeah, that could have been it. Could be a coincidence, but I hadn't thought about that. But that's kind of after that, they lose 2 of 3 to a good but not great Kentucky team at home. You're really worried about this team. Then they go to Knoxville the next week. They get blown out on that Friday night, and then they win the doubleheader, and they've been off. They've been playing very well ever since.
Mitch, you got West Virginia on a crazy hot streak right now, and in the Big 12, just in general, there's Arizona, TCU, Kansas. I guess you maybe throw in the mix as well in terms of teams that are just kind of competing there near the top. How would you describe the league? How would you describe West Virginia and what they're doing right now, and just what stands out to you about the level of play and kind of the teams involved at the moment?
Yeah, it's a league without great teams. It's got good depth. They lose Texas, they lose Oklahoma. 2 teams, Texas obviously is a premier program. Oklahoma competed for a national championship a couple years ago. West Virginia is an interesting team. They go Steve Saban's the first-year coach. Gaudy record, 34-4, 13-3. They can really hit the ball. I think they got 4 guys hitting over 350. Their pitching staff's good, but not great. Their schedule has not been very difficult. They played a ton of home games in the pre-conference. So that's why their RPI has taken a while to creep up. It's now it's now up to 14, so they're in good shape there. But for a while, they had a ton of wins, and their RPI wasn't very good. Kansas has been a streaky team. They go to TCU 2 weeks ago, and they get swept. They come home in the biggest Sunflower State showdown ever in baseball. They beat Kansas State. I think Arizona is really, really good. Got off to a slow start against a tough schedule. And TCU, kind of missed the tournament last year, which is rare for them. They'll be back. This is probably looking like a 5-bid league, maybe 6. But I think to answer your question, not great at the top, but also not bad at the bottom. I think the bottom of the Big 12 is a lot better than the bottom of the ACC.
You brought up the former Pac-12 schools in Oregon State. I don't know if you actually mentioned Washington State, but Oregon State, they've won national titles. So how much does that history and who they are, no matter where they are now in the conference or lack of it, make sure that they have continued to be able to win and make a difference in the top 25.
Yeah, they're unique program. They did not, obviously, we know they did not get the bid to the Big Ten. Washington State gets invited to the Mountain West in baseball. Oregon State says, no thanks, we're good. They decided this year to play an independent schedule, which is very, very difficult to do in baseball. I think the last really good program to do it was maybe Miami in the late 90s. And they played a really good schedule. You know, they played Irvine, who's good this year. They're going to Nebraska. I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but they played a really quality schedule, and they picked up a lot of wins. They play Oregon 4 times. So I think that was one of the storylines before the season. How could this program, this national program, navigate a independent schedule? They're in everyone's top 10 right now. I think they're one top 5. They've got a loaded roster. They haven't committed to anything beyond this year. But Mitch Cannon's the coach there. They've kind of said, we're going to do it this way this year, and we're going to see how the landscape unfolds. I'll be interested to see where's this program in 3, 4, 5 years when they're not in a power conference. Are they still going to be trying to do it on their own? Are they going to join the Mountain West and play a league schedule?
Vanderbilt is an interesting team to me, Mitch, as well. I mean, they're in the top 10. They've had success recently. You know, they've moved up quite a bit in the last couple of weeks. Do they have staying power, you think?
Yeah, I live here in Nashville. I was at all 3 games in the Georgia series. It was a big series for Vanderbilt. They pitched the ball extremely well. And if you follow this, Tim Corbin's team's typically pitching and defense. You know, the national championship team in 2019, they hit the ball. J.J. Bleday, guys like that, Austin Martin, they hit the ball fine. But the last couple of years, and as the sport has turned to home runs, Vanderbilt has not, and they've just not had the power. That's kind of been their undoing. This team right now, some young guys are starting to hit the ball well. They had a freshman, Brody Johnson, who hit 2 3-run home runs on Friday night, hit 1 on Thursday. So that power is starting to come. But what they're doing is their rotation has been very, very good. And I think this is a team that's built for the postseason. If they can continue to play well in the regular season and stay home for the postseason, I think it's a team that can get to Omaha. If they have to go on the road and play at a small ballpark, it's home run friendly, they could be in trouble.
Mitch, I got to ask you about Texas Tech, because we got a lot of Red Raiders that check us out. I know we touched on the Big 12, but they're just sort of middle of the pack, and they've been one of those teams that's been the better programs in the league. Just your thoughts on them and just sort of where they are at the moment.
Yeah, I was just looking at some numbers today. You know, this is a team that went to 7 straight regionals up until last year, and they went 12-17 in the league, and they're 12-23 overall. Really rough non-conference schedule. 8-10. They've played better in the league, but they're not pitching well. Their ERA in league games is about 7. And if you're like a Red Raider fan, you're hoping for a late run, even with that decent but not great record. They still have to play Arizona and West Virginia, 2 of the best teams in the league. So I don't want to boil it down. Like, sometimes sports are pretty simple. The roster is just not as good as it was 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago when they were going to Omaha on a consistent basis. So I know it's going to be frustrating for a fan base that expected to play at home in the postseason and go to Omaha, but they have definitely fallen down that food chain a couple rungs last couple years.
Garrett, you say you have a super chat. I think that Mitch may have answered it before the chat, but go ahead and put it up.
Yeah, it's asking how many regional invites do you expect the Big 12 to get this year?
Okay, so let's go. West Virginia, Kansas, Arizona, and TCU are all in really good shape right now. So that's 4. Then you got Arizona and Kansas State. RPIs in the 40s there. Good league records. I think they can get 6. I don't think they'll get any more. Cincinnati, Baylor, both 8-10 in the league. RPIs aren't great there. So if I were a betting man, which I've been known to a little bit in the past, I would say 5, 6 if they're fortunate.
Will any one of them host?
Yeah, I think West Virginia is in position to host. Their RPI is 14 right now. And the committee, this isn't like a mandate, but they like to spread the sport out geographically. And it's good for the sport when there's West Coast hosts, and West Virginia's not Northeast, but you guys know what I mean. It's not Southeast. So I think it's good for the sport if West Virginia can host. Now, they're not going to host if they truly don't deserve it, but if they're on the border, on the edge, I think they will. And Arizona's got a 16 RPI, 12-6. They've got some really good wins. TCU, they got swept at UCF last week, but their RPI is 15. They're 12-6. So I'd put the over under hosts at 1.5.
Mitch, what do you think of the evolution of baseball upcoming, the House settlement and the potential impacts there, roster limitations or roster expansion and the money? Like, how much are we seeing that already, the NIL factors coming into play, and how much more with the potential changes do you think baseball starts to look a little bit different?
Yeah, we got about 2 hours for this, guys. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I know, man. I know.
I wrote about this. I do a preseason at The Athletic. I do a preseason coaches roundtable, and those, if you subscribe, go check it out. It was published in February. The coaches really went in depth on this. I think it's going to vary from league to league. I think the SEC is going to be all in. They're going to, if it's 34, it's going to be the scholarship max. I think most of those teams are going to be fully funded. I would expect the top end of the ACC and the top end of the Big 12 to be the same. We're working on a story. One of my writers is working on a story about like the Big Ten's commitment. And I actually talked to Tim Corbin, Vanderbilt's coach, about that. Like, how important is it for the rest of the country to be committed? And he's like, it's just good for college baseball if all these schools are all in, but there's only so much money. Certain schools, we know football and men's basketball are king, but certain schools, especially in the Big Ten, hockey's more important than baseball. Wrestling might be more important. So I think it's going to vary league to league. It's going to vary school to school. I'm fascinated to know about this new clearinghouse for NIL. Like, are schools like Tennessee, LSU, some of the big, some of the schools with the big donor bases, are they still going to have the collectives that can go above and beyond the house settlement? So it's a really complex situation. Probably didn't answer it that great, but it's just, there's a lot of unknowns there, and it's going to affect college baseball a lot in the next 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah, so there's going to be some teams that I've seen projected have 30 scholarships in baseball. Hasn't that always been like a third of a scholarship across the board? 13 of them overall? I don't know the exact number.
It's been 11.7 for years,
okay,
and you can divvy it up how you want. Now, that's a little, there's certain schools that have in-state, like Georgia has the Hope Scholarship. If you have a 3.0 scholarship and you live in the state, you get free tuition at Georgia. Vanderbilt, Stanford, Duke, schools like that have great financial aid. So if you meet, some guys are on financial aid, not on baseball scholarship. So there's ways kind of around that. But now it's like you can if you want, you can fully fund all the way up to 34. And again, my understanding is most SEC schools are going to do that. And it's going to be really difficult for a program in other parts of the country and other leagues that don't do that to compete.
Mitch, nobody in the Big 12 from the time it opened in 96, even through all the changes, had ever won a national title other than UT. And, of course, UT has a chunk load of them. Arizona and Arizona State have a really good baseball history. Now, Arizona State doesn't have the Rick Mondays and Barry Bonds and, all the things that they had for many, many years. But do they give the Big 12 a chance with their history, tradition in baseball to get back in it?
Yeah, I think those were really good additions, really fine additions. And you mentioned Arizona State. They've kind of been not great the last 8 to 10 years, inconsistent, but going back to 70s and 80s, they were awesome. It was Arizona State, USC were kind of the power programs there. Arizona has been better than Arizona State of late. Won a national championship, I think, 10, 12 years ago. I forgot the year. Maybe it was 2012. So I think those are really fine additions. Losing Texas and Oklahoma hurt, but I think bringing those two teams in and what kind of West Virginia's emergence, their commitment to baseball helps. Houston is a program new to the Big 12 that's struggled in recent years, but also has a decent baseball tradition. So I think this league has the ability to rival the ACC as the second best league in college baseball. It's not there right now, but they've got that potential.
All right, you have UC Irvine, who's got a nice history. We've got obvious teams like Troy, Coastal Carolina. We know they've made a run, Southern Miss and others. And we mentioned Oregon State. Is there somebody else that's not a part of a Power Four, or even what could be considered like a Gonzaga in baseball? Is there somebody else who's been a nice surprise for you this year?
Yeah, Western Kentucky. They were I do a top 25 in The Athletic every week, and I had him number 25 last week, dropped out this week. Their coach, I forgot his first name, Radin, I believe his last name, longtime junior college coach in Iowa. One of those guys, just look up his Wikipedia page, won 90% of his games. And they just got a really good roster, very junior college heavy. They lead the nation, or they did last week. I'm sure they still do. They lead the nation in ERA. They can hit the ball well. They went on the road 2 weeks ago and swept Dallas Baptist, who's been a very good program. I think they're second in most NCAA tournament appearances in a row. I think they got 12 or 13. They came here to Nashville and lost to Vanderbilt in extra innings in a midweek game. That would have been a huge RPI boost. So I think they could be an at-large team if, let's say, Dallas Baptist wins the conference tournament. So they're kind of a fun team to watch from a program that has, we're typically not seeing in postseason play.
Last thing from me, Mitch, I was watching a game. It was Florida and golly, I forgot who they were playing.
State?
Yes. And neither
You didn't see
one of
much
them,
pitching. You didn't see much pitching, I'm guessing.
No, and they both were like 4-10 or 5-11 in the conference. What's happened to them?
Florida is more. Well, Florida made the Final Four last year. I know it's not called.
Yeah,
the Final
no,
Four.
yeah.
But they got off to a slow start. They were 13-7 in the league last year. They lose Jack Caglione. They've had some injuries on the pitching staff. Their offense just has not been nearly as good as expected. They're kind of fighting back, not to the degree that Texas A&M has, but Florida. I wouldn't be surprised if they played their way into a regional and got to the postseason. It's just their roster isn't as star-studded as it's been in the past. And again, those pitching injuries just hurt. Mississippi State fell off after their national championship. I was at the game. They won the national championship. It was like such a huge moment for the program. They did not make a regional the next 2 years. They made it last year, but they've struggled against the good teams they've played. Their pitching has not been good enough, as you saw in those games over the weekend. They gave up way too many runs late in games. So, the SEC is so good. If your talent falls off, you take a half a step back talent-wise. There's 2 or 3 teams that are going to pass you, and that's what happened to Mississippi State in the last few years.
Yeah, they also Wyatt Langford's now playing baseball when he's healthy for the Rangers, and obviously was an amazing player. Mitch, we'll be back in touch. We'd like to get you on again as we get closer to the start of conference tournaments and regional play. Thank you very much for being a part of it.
No problem. Enjoy it, guys. Take care.
Mitch Light, theathletic.com.